Welcome. We got Rell, got Shay. We got an exciting episode for you today. We got straight cinema. Get it? Cinema.
Ugh, that was corny.
With that being said, y'all
Sorry.
wasn't here for all that. You're actually here for the review. So, we're going to have very light spoilers. We're going to try our best. We're really going to try our best to not spoil the
Because we
film.
want y'all to see it.
And to be honest, there's not a lot of twist in it. So,
Yeah.
it's just a really beautifully done movie. So you should be okay to watch this review, but there may be a little bit. So you've been warned by this man and this woman. Women and man. All right, let's go. So one word after watching this movie, what are you gonna give it?
Fantastic.
You know what word I'm gonna give it?
Right.
Cinema. Get it? Cinema.
Right,
Ha! You thought you were done. You thought you were safe. Cinema.
I really want that to go away.
Um, actually, cinema. All jokes aside, just, just like it's what a movie should be.
I
It-
agree.
it's what a movie should be.
It's the experience you want to go and have it. I mean, literally, the woman sitting next to me. That's the cool part. When you have a movie where strangers talk to each other.
Don't get too caught up in this because we're doing a review.
I know.
Not shouting out people that sat next to you that was whispering in your ear, good nothing, sweet nothings.
She turned and said, "This is the one I'll definitely go see again." And I could see. She said I could watch over and over, and I agree with her.
Yep.
And I think that's the thing. It's an experience I feel like I have not had in the movies in a while. Like where people felt together as an audience. Don't you agree? Where it was.
I'm trying to think of the last. Black Panther, of course.
Of course, yeah. Black
Avengers, the Infinity War Endgame. I felt like
But
a lot of
I
people.
didn't have a positive experience in our Black Panther screening.
Okay, we're just talking
Oh,
about
in general, like
how
people
people
felt.
felt, the
Okay.
reaction of the crowd, the clapping, emotions. Yeah, there's once in a while that you just get a movie like that. And this was one of those movies where you felt everyone was just like in the moment in the movie, you know what I mean? And as a collective, you felt emotions, you felt the roller coaster. So yeah, I definitely agree that this is one of those moments, a moment in a lifetime type of films. All right, so what stood out to you immediately? Like what jumped out to you?
A couple of things. Of course, you've been seeing Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan doing a lot of press about how it was filmed.
Yeah.
So, and I just, when you have a collective of colors on screen, collection of complexions and shades, that is something, especially because they shot in New Orleans, in Louisiana, where I've filmed before.
Yeah.
So I am really sensitive to people shooting with different shades on camera and how they're lit and how they're captured. And because they did this with IMAX cameras,
Yeah.
I thought they did such a fantastic job with that. That's something I immediately noticed. The visual storytelling that you learned throughout the film. And honestly, Michael B. Jordan's performance. We weren't even 10 minutes in where I was like, I forgot I was watching.
Yeah. I think if we're talking about what stood out to me immediately was Michael B. Jordan. Because I'm not gonna lie, I was very focused on that because I know Michael B. Jordan sometimes gets a rap for being a bad actor at times. And I'm not saying I agree or disagree. I'm just saying this is what some people say, and he doesn't he's not that talented. Some people say that, right?
Which I'm trying to figure out who these haters are.
But you knew one. But
yeah, I did.
I say for this particular movie,
Did being the operative word.
For this particular movie, I feel like he was. I like Shayla said it best. You forget that he was Michael B. Jordan, right? Like because it's easy when you're a movie star to just be the movie star, right? Like sometimes even people joke about Denzel Washington. Sometimes he's just Denzel Washington in a role, and you feel like, is he phoning it in this role because he's so talented he could be himself and
still act his butt off. Yeah.
But then you see
Gladiator 2,
where I was like, oh, I forgot that's Denzel Washington. He's playing a whole different persona. And this was Michael B. Jordan, I think, right now at his finest.
Oh, absolutely. I definitely think you can see him maturing as an actor too. I think a lot of it has to do as well with him being a director and knowing what that, after doing Creed 3 and knowing what a director is trying to pull out of you. I think when you do kind of switch places with yourself a bit. That just like they say, all directors should act. There's some that are exceptions to the rule that can they just go out there and do the darn thing. I mean, I've not personally come across any film that Coogler has acted in, so I will say that he just has the gift.
Yeah.
But outside of Journal for Jordan, which it was the first time I felt like I honestly saw some exceptional chemistry between he and his female lead.
Yeah. Shantae Adams, right?
Shantae Adams. I thought that this was another one where you were, and I mean, especially because they had to play two characters.
Yeah.
So he rose to that challenge, and there were times like Rell, and I was like, oh gosh, I forgot I was watching him.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say he's such a magnetic personality that you want to support him anyway because he's one of those good guys, right? So we go to the movies to support him anyway. But I think at the end of the day, you're now starting to see him in his Denzel era, right? Where you're seeing him kind of
throwing big words out there. His Denzel era?
Let's see. I mean, because
one good role don't make it a Denzel era.
What did he do? What was the last one he did? So it was Creed 3, right? Was the last one before this one?
Yeah.
Because Journal for Jordan, because Creed 3 was after Journal for Jordan. He did a great job in Creed 3.
Denzel era started with Glory. Let's slow.
I know.
Script, pump the brakes.
But I will say this. This is the one thing we talked about with people like a Denzel Washington, like Norman Jewison, who directed Soldier Story and The Hurricane, said that Denzel actually revered stage more than he did screen.
Yes.
Before he really started to appreciate being a screen actor. I think when you come from that type of background, a lot of stage actors, because you don't get multiple takes, you don't get, you get that performance, and that's every time you step on that stage, and that's it. I think there's a practice that you fall into.
Of course.
Where you just deliver differently.
Yeah.
And I think because Michael B. Jordan has always been a screen-based actor, I think that it is a little harder when you don't do a lot of stage. I would like to see him do that, challenge himself like that in his career, because I do think you see him becoming more comfortable in his skin too. Yeah. So I think that is something I would like to see. But that is where the difference is in that. And I think Boseman too did stage.
Yes, he did.
So
and he trained in
in England, which I'm telling you, because them ladies and the individuals that come from England.
Yes.
Be putting it down. People can fight me, and the British actors. Oof.
Well, theater actors. I want to say theater actors.
I mean, they come from the place. From the man, right? Yeah. Shakespeare, the person that, wrote a lot of stories are based off of Shakespearean literature.
Yeah.
So,
but let's move it along. All right. Is there a scene, performance, or theme that hit, right? Like, so basically we talked about a performance that really hit outside of his performance. And let's not make it an or, let's make it an and. Is there, first, give me a scene, give me a performance outside of Michael B. Jordan, who played two people, and a theme that hit.
Well, there's a performance specifically.
Is this going to be a spoiler?
No, I don't want it to be a spoiler, but there is a performance by one of the gentlemen that's a relative of the twins that Michael B. Jordan plays.
Oh, yeah.
That I just...
Yeah. Talk about a diamond in the rough. Where did this
kid
come
is
from?
Incredible. Yeah. So I really look forward to seeing more from him. It's funny, even though Michael B. Jordan is, helmed as the star of this film, there is a breakout character in this project, which ends up being, really technically he's the story, the narrator in a sense.
Yeah.
So, because you think about it, he brings the monsters to the yard. He also, finds solace and peace within himself.
Yeah.
Based on, the conversations that he has with the twins. So there's a lot of things that, I think that performance in and of itself is very,
That's an
and
interesting. I'm sorry to cut you off. That's interesting because if you layer Smoke's story and the boy's story, they almost mirror each other, right? Like because they both started off with some type of inner turmoil and they both find peace at the end. That's interesting.
so I thought he did an exceptional job. And then I thought that performance in general, I mean, Ryan Coogler, like in the cast, were in their bags on this one. It was just in the crew,
Yeah.
exceptional job, especially capturing it film. I mean, that just had to be so difficult.
Yeah.
Honestly, another breakout scene was the love interest of the kid we were talking about. Her
Oh.
singing and dancing. She was another one. We said,
Yeah.
like, she's another one so there's two young black actors in this film that had these breakout scenes that I thought were phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I'm not gonna sleep on the white people in this film
Yeah.
either. I thought that they did. The white people. I
Well,
thought.
it's a lot nicer words than they used in some of the scenes.
I mean, it is 1930s Mississippi, and we were being called to.
Mm.
They did an excellent job as well. I have to say too, Ryan Coogler's so good with this, and that's the last thing. This is the last thing I'm gonna say. If there's a theme, he knows how to really tap into that vein of race relations
Mm-hmm.
without it feeling too soapboxy.
Yeah.
You know what he does and doesn't get credit for? It's subtle ways he knows how to address race relations that if you aren't, and I'm going to say a very controversial word, woke,
Mm.
you're going to miss it.
Yeah. I agree.
I just, that's, because I know woke's like a 4-letter word now, and technically it's a 4-letter word. When I first started working in television, particularly because I was in sports production, one of the sports anchors I worked with was a black female. And she said to me, always keep that third eye open. That's what he puts in his writing.
Yeah. So for me, first a scene that really hit, and this will I'll just say there's a musical and a dance number that was just something I probably never seen in movies before. I'm not going to tell you what it is. You'll all
Spike Lee's
experience
done
it.
something similar.
The merging of generations and the weaving of
Let me think.
cultures.
Stop me. No, it's been mostly period.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he stays in there. So this hasn't something I have now. Has Spike Lee used musical numbers in his films? Absolutely. So you basically took what Spike Lee did and
And
said,
he built on it.
turn it up to 10, right? Like so. A performance. I'm gonna go with a wild card because everyone's gonna say Michael B. Jordan. Everyone's gonna say Michael B. Jordan's love interest on both sides, black and white, or somewhat white, whatever. Anyway,
Yeah, that's
um,
controversial too.
and I'm gonna go with the main antagonist. When I say this dude was,
Yeah.
I mean, it was weird because the way that they, and this will be a light spoiler here, right? Like his motivation because he's a vampire, which that's not really a spoiler. We all know that obviously it's a movie about vampires, so the main antagonist is a vampire. So when you find out what he really wanted, right? Like what he was really after. And I won't tell you specifically that element, but I will say his motivation was to see his ancestors, which is kind of wild because like that's kind of what the basis of the movie was, connecting us through the generations of our ancestors and
That is
stuff. And
true.
him being a vampire, being alive for so long, not even ancestors. This would have been people who were probably alive with him. He was a vampire. He's a very old vampire. So all of his family and friends have died. So he just wanted to feel connected to something or someone. And he was willing to do anything and do anything horrendous to get that.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it was interesting. And also, speaking of theme, connectedness.
Yes.
You
That
know,
was
there
feeling a
was a part
connection.
of mind control in
Yeah.
this. There's connecting through the generations, connecting through music. It was it was weird, even though that this is like it's a horror film, and nothing good comes out of this. There is a theme of connecting this throughout, like connecting all and the
Well,
cultures, right?
starting with the fact that your main stars
Hmm.
are twins.
Yeah,
And if you've seen in the interviews leading up to, like you said, that connectedness is a really
yeah.
good
Oh yeah,
one.
they're twins. Yeah,
And but another thing too, it's funny when you were talking about themes like connectedness and the guy wanting to feel connected. So right, the twins, identical twins, have a lot of people, like scientists have even said this. There's a connection, a symbiotic relationship that's you know unexplained.
yeah,
And also, if you have seen a lot of his interviews leading up to it, the community that has the largest amount of multiple births
yeah.
within it is the Black community. We tend to have natural in our lineage naturally have multiple births
Hmm.
within our lineage specifically. So the connectedness, yes, that's another thing. Oh, also the breakout star that a lot of people have been talking about because this is his first role, actually. I think
Wow.
Miles Caton. Kid is Miles Caton.
Yeah.
Sorry, Caton. Fantastic. But yes, connectedness is another thing, and also I would say to a certain extent trust.
Hmm.
I think that is something that you know he's showing like where the lack of trust
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
our
Hmm.
community stems from,
Oh, yeah,
and also how it gets violated in the
yeah.
sense of where we still have trouble trusting.
It's just so many things that were actually hit, and even one thing that I pointed out, and this was interesting, maybe a stretch, but if you watch the movie, when you watch it, try to see it from this perspective of the main vampire using the poor white people to attack, basically for safety, and then using them to turn on the black people, and all for his self-interest. So basically, and then having this thing of a man in power turning two classes
Mm-hmm.
against each other,
Mm-hmm.
which I think was something either a happy accident or was intentional. But if you think
Considering the
about it,
time that we're in,
yeah,
yeah.
thinking about like racism and classism, and what is the bigger issue? Is it racism or classism? Some people say classism is where you have poor white people who think they're better than poor black people, when you're actually the only
Oh,
people benefiting
they
are the
addressed
rich
those
white people.
themes in How to Kill a Mockingbird.
Yep.
Like it was more believable that this black man was the offender than
Hmm.
So it was like the those that it in terms of the poor whites in that town, because they were white, the more affluent white people were willing to even believe them
Yeah.
than they were the black people. So it is interesting, like how he just tied in so many things from the South
Yeah.
that it just, so many things that are so prevalent in a lot of Southern areas. I mean, there's still lynchings happening in
Yeah. Yeah.
some
For sure.
spots down there. So I definitely feel like he just hit all of all of
Yeah.
the things you could possibly think of. This takes place in the early 30s. So,
Yeah. 1932. Yeah.
the Second World War hadn't even
Yeah.
happened. So, like where we were.
Yeah. So directing, cinematography, or casting, anything that stands out that's memorable. We touched on all these topics. I mean, I think I want to talk more about the cinematography because casting was awesome,
Hmm.
and maybe a little bit of the directing. And I'll turn over to directing more so for you and what stood out to you. You mentioned one thing about pulling out great performances, and I want you to touch on that because a lot of people don't appreciate that talent of directing, right? Like it's not just putting people in the right places.
Yeah.
So go
Because
ahead.
you work with a group of people too.
Yeah.
So you have to, when everything is firing on all cylinders for a project, and the reason we can speak from this on both of us can speak on this from the standpoint of like when you're pulling more of the weight than those you're working with, as opposed to when everyone's working as a collective, because we've worked in TV production long enough to know when everyone is playing their instrument and
Yeah.
the orchestra is playing well together, or when a few people are like slacking on their part of the of the composition, and some of the other parts of the orchestra have to pull them up for it so that the piece still sounds beautiful.
Mm.
That's kind of the best way I can say it. But then also trying to shoot my own short film 2 years ago, I remember talking to a filmmaker, and actually, she did really live on Netflix. Check that out when you guys get a chance. She said that when I was kind of walking her through what I went through in that experience and why no one was ever going to see that footage, she said, "Well, it sounds like the problem is you were the smartest person in the
Yeah.
room." And she goes, "And that can't be the case when you're doing a project like this. You have to have, you know, a collective of people, and everyone brings something to the table." Now, ultimately, as the director, you are making a lot of the final decisions on what's being filmed
Yeah.
and what, is going to go to print, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, another thing that you have to think of when you are trying to pull performances from your actors, you have to be very sensitive to a few things. One, they're playing someone they're not on a
Mm.
daily basis, right? This is a completely different person. And a lot of people look at acting and see it so glamorously because they get to, you know, go to red carpet events, they get to go to these lavish parties, and it looks like it's so beautiful. And it seems boiled down to such a basic
Yeah.
thing that people really don't appreciate what actors have to go through to bring out the performances that we're blessed to see, or the ones they win accolades for.
Mm.
It is probably one of the most personal things that you'll do if you are an actor, is to a working actor, is because for however long you're filming this project, you are this person. And
That's real.
you take a lot of that, if for you to really, really understand the character. Because I remember, this is something I had to learn. I remember between the trailer that I tried to do for a series, a series concept I had, and the short film. I remember a lot of the actors on that asking me to, if I had a character profile or breakdown, and it was such a quick trailer. Every scene
Yeah.
was like 10 seconds. That or scene lit was 10 seconds, and they wanted to know what their motivations were, why they were in it. I was like, really?
Mm.
And that
All
was
that.
because we work in nonfiction,
Yeah.
reality television. People are somewhat playing versions of themselves, for camera. So it's still there, even though that's exhausting for them too.
Yeah.
So because their daily lives are technically being invaded,
Yeah.
even though it's a contract, every day with cameras. And so they have to,
Yeah.
their life is being magnetized on such a large scale. But for an actor, when I did breakdowns for my short film, a lot of the actors, they thanked me because they got to understand who the person was that they needed to be. And when you talk to, I remember like when we were doing rehearsals, it really did feel good that my lead actually said, "Shayla, I love the way you direct, because you do it in a very supportive yet, constructive way of explaining how you kind of feel like why you want me to do it this way, or why you feel like the character would do it this
Mm.
way." I always feel like when you have written a script or you're directing someone, it's not just so much of getting them to give you the scene that you want per se. Everyone there is trying to make a project and trying to tell a story, no matter what their contribution is on that set. Some of the best performances, I feel like, are the ones you don't even expect to receive. You may go in thinking that you want it that way, and you may direct them a certain way, but if you're working in symmetry with with your cast, they're going to deliver it in a way where it might even blow your socks off.
Mm.
But you have had, as a director, have had to motivate them in a way where they're going to say, "You know what, I'm not even going to give you that and put a little extra sauce on it and see if you like it this way." And that's what I feel like you saw from I've never seen a cast in so long. Everybody is excited about this film.
Yeah.
I think that's what's so cool. Like, everyone is excited about this movie that has worked on it. And that's when you know it was a beautiful, you know, symbiotic project.
I agree. No, I agree. I definitely think like that's the one thing I've noticed that everyone has been super excited. So
Mhm.
it's being reflected in the marketing, it's being reflected in just like seeing them and how together they are with trying to get the project promoted. So on set, it must have been like that. And Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan, I think they when the two heads of the project set that tone, everyone
Right.
falls in line, right? Like
Yes.
so they get along so well that I'm pretty sure everyone just feeds off of that energy. And speaking of Ryan Coogler and his relationship with his
Oh,
cinematographer must be like, I mean, they must be
everyone.
one in
His
sync.
composition,
Yeah,
you know, because I even saw it was I think a TikTok with Haley Steinfeld and Mooney, who
yeah,
plays one of Michael's love interests in the films too,
mhm,
where they were speaking about the song she made, and she was like, Ludwig Göransson's score for this film was
yeah,
just, you know, heart wrenching yet
hmm
beautiful at the
hmm
same
hmm
time. And they've been working together since film school. And he's just got an exceptional year, and it's just
yeah.
it's interesting because watching and Sev Ohanian, who is also behind, the missing and the searching films,
Got you.
who is also part of Proximity. It's just it is one of those things. It's kind of like that's why you see people calling the relationship with Ryan and Michael being the next Denzel and Spike. If you haven't seen this kind of symmetry in a group of people working together, I would say since Spike Lee's Company,
Mm,
because there's so many other exceptional like filmmakers too that have come out, black filmmakers, that they may not have the same people every
yeah,
time, but it's like this is a collective, and I think that's why the work is so, because they've gotten in this pattern of being
yeah,
comfortable with one another. So the work is just
yeah.
reflective in that. You're not changing up your team every time. You're not. That is they almost they. I remember like when I wanted to get into narrative work,
Mm,
and the one thing people told me is sometimes you got to find that person that you
yeah.
just follow from project to project, because they take a lot of the same teams with them, and you see that
Yeah.
within them.
Well, you mentioned composition, and one thing that uh, I hope people get from is like it's not just it's how he merged different eras of music, and
Mm-hmm.
it didn't feel jarring because a lot of times Shayla, she doesn't like this specifically. Let's say The Great Gatsby, and I think
I
Romeo and
hate it.
Juliet did the same thing where they took a old film. Well, no, Romeo and Juliet was modern day, but The Great Gatsby used modern music with old time
It's a
period
40s
piece.
composition, yeah.
So
I mean, 40s people.
Idlewild, same thing, right?
Yeah.
For Shayla it didn't work. For me, I like it, but it doesn't work. But here they found a story reason for it to work, right? Like I guess in those other movies there was no story reason to include modern music, but here they found a story
Django did it
reason.
too.
Django did it too, right? Yes. So I think here they actually had a reason from a story standpoint other than, hey, popular track, listen to
Yeah.
this. And then they incorporated music from different cultures too. So another culture specifically was Irish, I believe. So
Yes.
to
That was
include
incredible
an
too.
Irish dance number with Irish music is kind of like, oh, kind of like, whoa, okay. I wouldn't expect a black director to include that, but here we are. And it was seamless. The music was used so seamlessly in this movie. I definitely think that if you watch the movie, appreciate also hearing the movie. Um, Also with the cinematography and it's just d- the shots. First of all, the lighting, perfect.
Ugh.
Lighting dark skinned skin can be difficult for certain cinematographers. And oh my God, it just was like everyone was perfectly lit. No matter how dark the scene was or how dark the person was, they stood out. And that was excellent. You can even see the beads of sweat on them.
Yeah.
You can feel the beads of sweat on them. That's how clear everything was and how everything was lit well. The wide shots felt grand and sweeping, and then you have more intimate shots was done so well. I mean, on all levels, this
I mean,
was
he
done
thought of
well.
every piece of the film. As you always talk about this, every scene you see should have a beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah.
And because you always talk about that as an editor, I think about how I'm going to start
Mm,
it, how I'm going to, because I almost feel like that is being lost in some of the television that, particularly nonfiction, that the beginning, middle, and end isn't thought
yeah.
through in a scene anymore. And I thought that that was something that was just so well executed in how he did that. But also, because I always find, and this is interesting, like, in nonfiction, because we have a lot of party slash event scenes,
Mhm.
because that's something where we get to get the ensemble cast together. And sometimes people shriek from those things having to film them. They're not easy, because
Yeah.
it's just like with Succession and doing that funeral. And I said he had to shoot that like it was a live event. And when he said
Yeah.
he did, it was like, of course, because of how the cinematography and everything was following all the cast members. But what I'm thinking of specifically, and this isn't really, I'm hoping I'm not like spoiling anything, sorry, because I really want you guys to go see this film. One of the things I found I always love is when when you're in a very large setting, like a party, or for this, it's the juke joint. And then you go into a separate room where others are having conversations, and then you come back out, and it's just like this.
Oh, yeah.
It feels like you're following the main characters throughout their story. He did such a good job in doing this.
Yeah.
And when you put in the reason why I'm like geeking out over this, you guys, is because Rel and I'll tell you, creating those pod moments is and to cut it together is so difficult, because what people don't realize is those, especially when unless you do this type of storytelling work,
Yeah.
those are shot separately. That background noise when you go into a room and those other people are having that conversation and you hear that party isn't going on. They're just shooting
Yeah.
that scene. So
Yeah.
to think of how you're going to make it feel seamless it's very difficult to do, and he executed it so well.
While juggling this uh, shooting in different formats, while juggling
A character playing one of your actors playing twins, identical
twins.
twins, so you had to figure out when the stand-in was, because there's times when Michael B. Jordan's talking to Michael B. Jordan,
Yep.
and you know it's not him talking to himself, it's somebody else. I mean, it's fantastic.
Yeah. So I think Ryan Coogler, if I had to come anything away from it and of like just summing up watching this film, if you are a aspiring filmmaker or a content creator, this will inspire you to pick up a camera and do something.
Yeah.
This will inspire you to get up there and not just do something, be creative with it, right? Like not just do some mundane thing that everyone else is doing. No offense to people who do skits and stuff like that, but you take someone else's skit and you do it. Now, this will actually inspire you to be like,
I mean,
yo,
I've been on a 2-year drought since my film kind of fell apart, and this inspired. Like I'm ready to go.
yeah,
Like it just as a storyteller, you're like, oh, I want to make it, because one of the reasons we fell in love, we got into this,
mhm,
is the impact we feel
yeah,
and the love of storytelling. And I just thought that, I mean, I felt this way when I saw Origins, but Origins was one of those things too where it felt like, gosh, this could be a really difficult thing to pull off
yeah,
if you don't have Ava DuVernay's years of
yeah, yeah,
experience.
yeah, yeah.
The same with like Nickel Boys.
Nickel Boys, yeah,
It felt like one of years of experience, where with Ryan Coogler, like, oh, I kind of want to try something, and I kind of want to think, because I mean, it could have easily, this was someone that didn't have his years under their belt,
yeah,
could have been very jarring.
yeah, 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 yeah,
The way he took you in and out of that party,
yeah,
it could have been very jarring, and it could have been messy.
yeah,
But that it was done so fluidly. That is not easy to do.
yeah. And I'll say this, and I mentioned this early when we were, just starting a live stream. This was a movie
It was.
that has horror elements. Keep that in mind. This is a movie. This is a beautiful movie. a beautiful dedication to different cultures and how he handled it very sensitively. And this was like, and also like a love letter to our ancestors.
Yes.
And so this isn't just a horror movie. This isn't, I mean, Shayla is not a fan of she likes horror, but she doesn't like to watch it.
I know. I actually do really like horror. I'll turn it on like in the middle of the day. That's probably the best time to watch it for me.
And then look away, right? Like this is one of the rare times you don't even have to look away at the
No.
horror elements, not heavily reliant on jump scares. It's just like, man, even the horror elements are tastefully done.
They are.
So I definitely say, like, keep that in mind of like why we're so hyped about this movie is because it's an experience that we have never actually experienced before. So.
And the character development, like, you know, if you want to get to know, I mean, he did it without voiceover. He did it without, you know, there is some narration in the, you know, which kind of helps you give the background of understanding the musical element of the film, which I thought was super, you know, important. And that way we don't have to get this weird exposition somewhere in the midst of the film. But it also, I felt there was this sense of, like Rell said, there's not only a love letter to our ancestors, but also, I mean, I just feel like in a time too, and this could be controversial, seen that way, where I just feel like the idea of Black pride is so fragile, and we're shying away from wanting to be called Black or, you know, African Americans or whatever like label has been put on us or we've adopted. I just feel like this is something that we needed.
Yeah.
Because I don't unfortunately like to see the direction our people are in, you know, at times. And it is very inspiring to see that there's still people, because Ryan Coogler is still very much a very young director. So for him to understand the levels of culture, because, you know, he, like he said, he had an uncle that was a part of Great Migration. So for him to appreciate that and to give that type of love in this film to something that was personal to him, I thought was fantastic.
Yeah.
So and for everybody in the cast to kind of give it that same care was very, in the crew, you know, it was very just, you're right. It was just the character development.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say too. Was so natural. And so there wasn't a ton of, you know, you knew, not to give away spoilers, but even when Michael B. Jordan goes to a grave, you knew what that was just off of what he said.
Yeah.
It was like, oh my gosh. I mean, and you do get a little bit more as to what specifically, but you still walk away. There's things you understand that there's loss. You understand that there's, without us needing to know it ever. And he knew the points of when to infuse it.
Yeah.
Amazing.